So we are in a series on rest. We are also in Lent, right? So Lent is the 40 days before Easter. It's a time of fasting, and it's a time of preparing to celebrate Easter and the resurrection. And so a long time ago, bye-bye. We used to do dueling pastors, which was me and Rod sitting up here, but I think I have a new person, so she can sit up here and we can and she would win any duel that we ever. Yes, cuteness. Anyway, we're in the series on rest, and the reason that we've been talking during Lent about rest is because I said you guys are all tired, right? I'm tired, you're tired. You don't get enough sleep, okay? I wear this little thing around me that tracks my sleep, and I looked at some of the data, and it informed me that only 70 some odd percent of the world in my age group gets more sleep than I do. That I get more sleep than only 38% or something like that. I don't remember. I'm like, I don't get enough sleep. I'm tired. My little thing tells me I'm tired. The other reason I said we need to talk about rest was most of us just don't know what our purpose in life is. And when you don't know your purpose, you feel tired. And the third reason that I said we needed to rest, and I'm going to need my clicky thing here, was that most of us are just emotionally drained. We got lots of little kids. We all work hard jobs. We're just emotionally drained. And so we needed to talk about rest. And so we decided to use this verse here, Mark chapter 6, verse 31. But before I get to this overview of rest, I'm going to give you three things, and I want you to write them down. Hopefully, if you've heard the previous sermons, you've seen this. So I'm going to give you three new things, and I want you to write them down, because if you don't remember anything about my sermon, I want you to at least play with these three ideas, okay? So rest, we're going to be talking about this bottom one, a quiet place. But rest in general has three principles that I want you to hold on to tonight. Number one, and this is going to sound really weird, but we all are where a lot of chairs are. So number one, rest is about finding your chair, okay? Rest is about finding your chair. Rest is about holding your chair. And rest is about offering your chair. Okay? So find your chair, hold your chair, offer your chair. I just want you to have that image since we're all sitting in chairs and couches. All right, we'll come back to this. Okay, here's what we said rest was, and we've been kind of working our way through that. Number one, rest is unplugging. In Mark chapter 6, verse 31, Jesus realizes that he and his disciples haven't eaten, and he says, "Come with me to a quiet place so you can rest." So number one, we said, you got to unplug from what's happening. And we said unplugging was disengaging and then evaluating, and we talked all about that. Second, we said rest doesn't mean running away from people. He invited his disciples together to a quiet place. So there's some elements of rest that are built in community. And Rod covered the ideas of rest in friendship and rest in service, in participating in the community. Okay? Then Jesus invites his disciples, lastly, to a solitary place or a quiet place. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about the idea of finding yourself a quiet place. Okay? Now, remember I talked about super sleep? Anybody remember this? Yes. How many people have tried out super sleep? Anybody? Oh, look out, we got 2 takers, right? Where you just, 3 takers on super sleep. Meaning you just slept for a very long time. You went to bed at 6. You slept 13, 14 hours. You just let your body rest. And then when you woke up, you stayed in bed and kept resting. Right? Well, that was one of the things we talked about. Well, I was thinking that that's probably the most quiet place you could end up, is sleeping for a really long time. But when we're talking about rest in the context of Jesus and context of Sabbath, and we've been kind of talking about it in this idea of from Psalm 46 where David says, "Be still and know that I'm God." God is speaking through him. He says, "Be still and know that I'm God." That part of going to a quiet place is giving you the opportunity to be still, right? To be still. And when you're still, you kind of are able to tap in to who God is. Now, in these quiet places, what Jesus says to us is what Matthew 11, 28 and 30, or 28 to 30 says. This is what Jesus offers us. He says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." A big part of finding that quiet place is beginning the process of understanding where the burden is, where the weariness is, what you're actually carrying on yourself, right? The things of this world, the things that weigh you down, the anxieties, all those kinds of things. But here's the reality about finding the quiet place. Number one, you need a quiet place. You should find a park somewhere. You should go hiking. You should create a space in your house. You should have some place that you can go to that really is quiet. You should figure out how to get there. Maybe, and I often say this, but maybe it really is just the bathroom if you have a lot of kids and you lock the door, and maybe you have to duct tape them to a wall so you can have that quiet space for a few moments in the bathroom and they don't do anything they shouldn't. Come on, guys. There we go. But here's the reality, if you think about that picture, is that even though you may try to find a quiet place to be still, to know who God is, and that sounds really romantic and all, scientists have found that even 30 decibels of noise, which means the humming of a refrigerator, can disturb your sleep and have detrimental impact on your life. So all of those people who sleep with noise machines like me, it's actually disrupting your sleep, okay? But I can't show you this. In fact, NPR just did a huge special on it, and they were going through all the studies in Sweden and a couple other places where they've done this. The data is pretty good. Anyway, I got a bunch of postmodern negative people. That's okay. Yeah, I'm just saying. Anyway, here's the point. The point is that disruption exists everywhere. No matter how quiet your space ends up being, you will be disrupted. You cannot avoid being disrupted, right? It's in the brokenness of our world. So even when you find your quiet space, expect to be interrupted, okay? I want to put that there because I want to talk about the village for a minute. And I want to talk about this thing that we say about the village. We say the village is healing the city one person at a time. And I went back and listened to a whole bunch of sermons over the last few weeks, all the way back to almost 2 years after we started. And we were saying repeatedly, the village is about healing the city one person at a time. But here's the thing. The way that you do that is in the midst of resting. The thing that you and I have an opportunity to do in practicing rest and being disciplined in resting and finding quiet places is offer healing to other people. And here's what I mean. There's this story in the Gospel of John about the woman at the well. Now, Jesus and his disciples are traveling through Samaria. They didn't go around. And his disciples get to a well, and they head off into the town to get food. And Jesus stays. And the text says that Jesus was tired. Now, what I imagine when I read this is that Jesus saw the well. It was the middle of the day. It was hot. He was tired. And he thought, I'm in charge. I'm going to send the disciples in to get food, and I'm taking a nap, right? It's a quiet place. It's by the well. Nobody's coming to the well in the middle of the day. I'm sleeping. But what happens is when he's sitting there at the well, a woman comes and she begins to draw water, and he asks for some water. Now, he could have gotten his own water, but he asked this woman for water, and they begin talking. So all of a sudden, Jesus' sleep, Jesus' rest is disrupted, and it's disrupted in a way that is transformative by one person. You see, in this dialogue and in this conversation with this woman, Jesus begins to tell her all about who he is and all about who she is. And she's so amazed that she heads off into the city and brings the entire city to the well in the middle of the day. Well, you find out that this woman is in the middle of the day coming to get water because she's a woman that no other woman wants to talk to. She's a woman who's been married multiple times, has lots and lots of boyfriends. She's a woman that nobody wants to look at or talk to or deal with. And yet, that's the woman who ends up at Jesus' rest. And that's the woman who transforms a city. Now, the thing that we want to do as a community, when we talk about healing the city one person at a time, us, followers of Jesus, people who are trying to offer our lives to one another, is that if we're going to practice rest, what we're hoping is that we're all going to invade each other's rest, and that we're actually going to be present and offer some transformation to one another. And so that's where we come back to this idea of finding your chair, holding your chair, and offering your chair. Now that may seem kind of odd, but here's the thing. If your rest is going to be disrupted and you're not going to have an opportunity really to get all the rest you want, then you need to take your quiet place with you. And the way that you take your quiet place with you is that you come and practice resting amongst people. So at the Village, you have 3 places that you can practice resting. Coming here on Sunday, going to Pilgrim Group, going to Monastic Community. Those are our structural things. And in those places, you can practice these 3 ways of resting, which you can also do in your quiet place, that will help you be present. See, the problem is that most of the time I'm tired, and when I'm tired, I'm grouchy. And when I'm grouchy, no goodness ever happens. Right? I have learned as a father and as a husband and as a pastor that being tired and not being present in what's going on and not practicing rest makes me grouchy and angry and mean and barky. And I just come in and I bark at everybody. Almost like a seal, right? This little practice that I want to kind of talk you through is a way that you can come into community, rest, and offer people good things out of that, okay? So the first thing we have here is finding your chair. And above finding your chair, I have this little phrase saying, not knowing, okay? Now, last night, I went out with some people who have 11-year-olds, and I have 11-year-old, and we talked about how 11-year-olds seem to know everything, okay? They know everything, and I think most kids between the ages of 3 and 11 know everything, and then teenagers even know more than everything. But the first key to resting is deciding to squish down your 11-year-old. Your inner, and my son's name is Elliot, you're going to squish your inner Elliot. You're going to squish your inner Jake, your inner Christopher, your inner Owen, right? Your inner Ellie. We're going to squish our inner 11-year-old. That's in order to rest, you have to walk into community and say, I don't know everything. I don't know anything. Right? That's the first thing you have to do. Now, the second thing, part of this find your chair idea is, kind of finding where you're going to sit. Second thing is all about story. We all have stories, and we all live in them. right? And stories are what make you important. Like the more I know about your story, the more I feel connected to you, right? Stories are important. In fact, let me tell you a story about myself just to illustrate this. And in particular, when people know significant stories about you, they feel connected to you, right? So when I got married, and Michael, I'll probably need to use you to click that little thing in the moment, not yet. But when I was on my wedding day, Sue and I had this little thing that we did. So I was standing with the pastor, and she was standing way far at the end of the aisle with her dad. And we played a song by Mark Cohen called True Companion, right? Which is a super cheesy song. And for 4.5 minutes, we made 400 people stare at us while we looked at each other romantically and thought about these words. Well, so to get you into the mood for that, I would like to play that. I don't know if it'll work, but we'll give it a shot. I just threw it. I don't know if it's going to do it. Will it play it? No. Does it have a player somewhere underneath it? Oh. Ah. Well, I'm going to have Mike do that. All right, Mike, just give me like a few bars of the song. Come on. See, I don't remember the words either. There you go. Anyway, it's got, I listened to it. I hardly ever listen to it. It's not really our song anymore. But I don't even know the words, but I listened to the words in preparation for this sermon, and I started crying, and I thought, oh, it was so romantic. But I remember standing there and thinking, like, oh, she's so beautiful, and this is so incredible, and I'm terrified. This is crazy. That's a story about me. Now you know something more about me. Now you're a little bit more connected to me. The problem is that when you and I, one of the things that's disruptive in our life and the thing that makes us tired is we're always living in our story. We're living in our problems and in our life. And part of resting is shifting your story to living in Jesus' story. Okay? And what I mean by that is that when you come here, part of what you're supposed to do is immerse yourself in the story of Jesus. So let's just talk for a moment about Jesus' story. What is the most significant moment in Jesus' story? He rose from the dead. It's crazy. Like, the reason you're here is that Jesus gives you hope, right? Well, there is a significant moment in Jesus' story before this that happens that we celebrate today in Palm Sunday. So I'm going to read that to you. John chapter 12, verse 12, it says, "The next day, the great crowd that had come for the festival heard that Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem. They took up palm branches and went out to meet him, shouting, 'Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the King of Israel.' Jesus found a young donkey and sat on it, as it was written, 'Do not be afraid, daughter of Zion. See, your king is coming, seated on a donkey's colt.' At first, his disciples did not understand all this. Only after Jesus was glorified did they realize that the things had been written about him, and these things had been done to him." Now, Jesus rides into Jerusalem as a king right before he dies, right before he's raised from the dead. He's the king. When you walk through those doors and you go to find your chair, the way you begin to rest is to say, in a mantra of sorts, "I am going to squish my inner 11-year-old. Number one. Number two, Jesus rose from the dead. Jesus rode in to Jerusalem. Jesus sat with a woman at the well and spoke her life. Jesus stood up and defended a woman caught in adultery and a woman who poured perfume all over him and raised Lazarus from the dead. Like, this is Jesus' story that we're here for, not our story. And part of resting is settling into that story. Now, Paul offers you something sweet about that. In Romans chapter 8, verse 11, it says, "And if the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his spirit who lives in you." Part of living in Jesus' story is sitting in your chair and saying, the Spirit of God who raised Jesus lives in me. Part of finding your chair is just sitting in that. Let that wash over you. Think about that. Contemplate it. Put aside the anxieties of your children who are know-it-alls. Put aside of your bank account. Put aside the anxieties of having to deal with your husband or the lack thereof or any of those kinds of things. And sit in the reality that if you have embraced Jesus, the Spirit that raised Jesus is in you. Now, once you've found your chair, the second thing is you got to hold on to your chair. Right? You got to hold your chair. Now, I put up there, bear witness. Now, you would think that this means now I found my chair, I'm centered, I'm connected into Jesus' story, and now I'm gonna violently hold this chair. No. Let me read to you a couple things that Jesus says out of Matthew. Matthew chapter 11, starting in verse 24. "Then Jesus said to his disciples, 'Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up the cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world yet forfeit their souls? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with the angels, and then he will reward each person according to what he's done.'" Matthew 7, starting in verse 7. "Ask, and it will be given you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened." Now that may kind of seem odd connected to this hold on to your chair, those verses, but here's what I mean by holding on to your chair. If you're in a place where you are centered in on Jesus' story, holding your chair is not a closed fist thing. See, in martial arts, there's closed fist, which is an attacking, and there's open fist, which is a defensive stance. Holding your chair is actually holding your hands open and saying, okay, God, it's not about my story. It's not even about me. I need to give up my life to gain it. So I'm in a seeking position. I'm looking for you. Holding your chair, bearing witness, is making a statement, both internally and externally, that you need Jesus. Right? Part of resting is saying, look, I need help. I need help. I can't do this. This isn't working. I know you need me to sacrifice. Well, you know what part of giving up your life is? Saying that you don't have it. Like you don't know what to do. That you're in a helpless position. Part of resting and getting rid of your burden is saying, I don't know what to do with these, so you take them. So part of holding your chair and bearing witness is actually saying, I have needs. I'm needy. I don't have the answers. Right? I don't have the answers. That's a very vulnerable thing to do. Because even though you might like to say you're needy, internally most of us believe that we know what we need and we know the answer. It's very important for you to say, okay, I'm in the vulnerable position. I need answers. I need help. Right? So now you have found your chair. You're holding your chair. These are acts of rest. These are acts of creating a quiet space internally for yourself. The last one is offering your chair. The last one is offering your chair. So let me just read two passages to you. One out of John 14, and the other out of Galatians. John 14. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father, and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. And Galatians 6:9 says, let us not become weary of doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Therefore, as we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially to those who believe, who belong to the family of believers. So offering your chair is once you're in this vulnerable position, once you're living in Jesus' story, something actually happens that's really amazing. You actually begin to see Jesus working in other people's lives. So when you come here on Sunday night and you sit in your chair and you begin this process, what's going to happen is that you're going to be given the opportunity to begin to ask God for things for other people. Because what will happen when you go through the process saying, I don't know, it's not about me, I'm in need, Jesus begins to reveal everything that's needed in your community. And so what you get to do then in offering your chair is begin to pray aggressively for people. So as you sit here, you can begin to say, God, I know this is going on in so-and-so's life. I want you to do this. And I know that you'll do that because that's what you're doing. You can begin to feel and know that you have authority. See, what happens is that when we're tired, most of the time we feel powerless. We don't have anything. We don't have anything to give. But once we recenter ourselves, we all of a sudden realize Jesus is acting and we can join him and we can pray aggressively for transformation in our kids' lives and transformation in the lives of the people around us and in our family. In Galatians 6, 8, and 9, Paul says we have to keep doing good. Now, here's the thing about offering your chair to people. You don't need to look for the people to offer good to and pray for. They are the people who are right in front of you. When you look around in this community, when you wake up in the morning and see your kids or your roommate or your dog for that matter, right? Dog needs prayer too, right? But no, seriously, you all of a sudden realize that you have an authority and something good and powerful to offer because the Spirit of God is in you and Jesus says that he will do whatever you ask. So, I love this idea because I like to think about the village as you guys being a bunch of monks, right? Who practice things. And I like to think about it that we do it in ordinary life, right? When you walk into your house, when you walk in here, when you go to work, that you have practices that you do. And the one that I'm inviting you into is creating a quiet space wherever you go for you to be present, right? And so what I'm inviting you to do is practice this find a chair, hold a chair, offer a chair in every aspect of your life. Meaning, when you go to work tomorrow morning, I want you to think, it's not about me. It's about Jesus' story. It's about my own vulnerability and needing help. And it's about me seeing what God is doing around me. I'm going to practice this. I'm going to put this in my awareness in front of me, right? I don't know if I have any more slides. There's an empty slide. Okay. So, does anybody have any questions, thoughts, questions from previous sermons? Want to continue to argue my science? Anything? Yes, sir. Why a chair? Well, because part of meditating, I think, often involves sitting. So, I thought, and there are chairs everywhere. In the back, Emily, did you have your hand up? Yes. Oh, here comes the mic. So you're saying, you hear me saying that I'm talking about laying. I didn't catch everything you said, so maybe you could repeat it.
Remember, handy tool for choosing to be present in the moment, to take ownership of and enjoy what Jesus has done for us, and then his self-sacrifice, and then to be sacrificially available to others by being present.
Yes.
By choosing to be at rest rather than worried about whether we can get stuff done or what people think about us or whether we can handle the pain level. Or am I hearing you?
Yeah. I think primarily what I'm saying is that part of the reason you and I are so tired, and often are tired, is because we're living in our own story, and we're weighed down by our own stories, our own anxieties, our own frustrations, our own anger about what's happening, and not living in Jesus' story and what he's doing and what he did. And so when we're able to do that, it does bring us into the present. We are more present. We are like Jesus.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I like that it has to do with mindfulness, but opposed to the way that I understand the Buddhist way of mindfulness is just to empty yourself of everything, mm-hmm. and to just allow whatever the moment is to be what the moment is.
Yeah.
Which is helpful in some ways, but with this, we're being mindful of wherever God is having us in each moment. Mm-hmm. And I've been kind of trying to do this over the last couple months, and what I've really found is, like, when and all of you know, I've struggled with anxiety for years, but my anxiety is lessened when I'm able to just focus on whatever it is that God has in front of me at that moment, whether it be working or my wife or whatever it is. It's when I look back or I look forward. If I start thinking about what's coming, or if I think about all the things that have happened before, that is when I'm not at rest, and that is when I am disturbed.
Yeah.
So thank you for, this is powerful, and thanks for that.
Hmm? Up front here. You got to have the mic.
I was just hoping that you could offer a little more application or clarify the squishing down of our inner 11-year-olds in, like, reference to what you're talking about.
I think I always make a joke that you ask a guy how to how a photocopy machine works, and he'll tell you, even though he doesn't know how a photocopier works. And I think that we're all geared that way, and that when we come into situations in life, or even introspectively, we think we know what the answer is and how people should do stuff and the way things should be. So part of, I think, the not knowing is just admitting as we enter into community that we don't have, like, all the answers for ourselves or everybody else, and that our trying to hold down the reflex of having the quick answer for things, to be like, I have this problem. Oh, well, here's the answer to that. So that's kind of what I was talking about. One more question.
So I really like the idea of bringing the quiet place with you wherever you go. So you're in that quiet place regardless of what's happened. I mean, Jesus did that in 6:31. He was calling him to a quiet place, and everybody followed him.
Right.
And so he had to kind of create that
right.
quiet place. But my struggle with applying that is that all it takes is a little bit of noise to make it not quiet anymore, and you can't like bring more quiet. It's like with light, light enters the room. There's light in the room. You can't add darkness to the room. You can only add light. So you can take away the light. So how do you take away that noise to create the quiet place, but in the midst of all the noise that life brings to you? Like, I've got an 11-year-old sitting right next to me. So I got to not crush my own, but you know, and deal with that noise too. So how do you practically do that, or what are some ideas for practically doing that, or more ideas? You've given some.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that I don't think Christians do, because I grew up in the church and this was not given to me, but I spend a lot of time now rehearsing internally Jesus's stories. And not only do I rehearse Jesus's stories, but I stick myself in them. So right now, one of the stories that I keep returning to is the woman caught in adultery. And as I enter into every situation with my 11-year-old, with my wife, with the church, I put myself in the place. And am I Jesus there? Am I defending somebody? Am I the woman just caught in my own shame and hearing Jesus' words? Or am I the Pharisees holding the stone? And it helps me be out of my story and in Jesus' story. It's just kind of using these different pictures and actually rehearsing them as I enter into things. It helps me say, okay, this isn't really about me. I'm going to always use Jesus as a way of interpreting what's happening around me. So that's one way I have found to be helpful. But yes, Corey. And then I'm going to...
I wonder if our 11-year-olds would know how to best engage with our own inner 11-year-olds.
Yes. And if we had more time, we could. We'll have a forum next week during Easter with all 11-year-olds telling you how to crush your inner 11-year-old. Or just help them be quiet a little bit. We don't want to crush them. That's not a good thing. Swish? Oh, squish your 11-year-old. Okay. Well, I'm going to pray and ask that God would bless all of this. Jesus, hang on, guys. I don't want to squish you. Jesus, thank you so much for our community and the way that you love us. And thank you for your sacrifice and for raising from the dead and giving us hope in the midst of all of this. And we ask that you would just bless the food and our time of worship. In your holy name, amen. A couple ways to respond. One, back there is the healing chair. If you want to sit in there to be prayed over, you can. Number 2 is communion. If you're a follower of Jesus, if you say you can stand with his broken body and his blood poured out for you, then please come take the bread. It's a time of celebrating Jesus' death, of remembering what he's done for us on the cross. Take the bread, break it, dip it in the wine or the juice, and remember what Christ has done. The other way to respond is offering, and tonight the baskets didn't show up, which is a common occurrence in my life. So anyway, they're in my office. So if somebody wants to grab those, that would be great. If you have a key, which everybody does, you can get in my office. Yes. Yeah. If you want to get in my office, just use the church key. Now you all know. There you go. All right. We're going to spend some time meditating and worshiping God. So let's do that.